Our first child was 2 years old and his behavior was horrific. And we started to see that if I fed them real food, they wouldn't want to eat it at first because they didn't know what it was. Their taste buds didn't even recognize it. So we grew a garden and their taste buds would change over a 2-week period. This is the Mandy protocol. The real food recovery protocol.
Welcome to the Wise Traditions Podcast, sponsored by the Weston A. Price Foundation for Wise Traditions and Food, Farming, and the Healing Arts. We are your source for scientific knowledge and traditional wisdom to help you achieve optimal health.
I'm your host, Hoda Labrada Gore. This is episode 42, and my guest is Mandy Blume. Mandy is a woman with a passion to bring health and wellness to thousands of children in the U.S. foster care system. She started out by just taking in foster children herself, and then the dream and work expanded from there. At California Polytechnic State University, Mandy graduated with degrees and obtained cooking and nutritional credentials. But what will blow you away is the way she rolls up her sleeves to impact foster children and foster homes. Before we jump into the conversation, we want to thank our sponsors. Wise Traditions is supported by White Oak Pastures, radically traditional farming. Visit whiteoakpastures.com. And listeners like you. We could not stay on the air without your support. Thank you so much. Welcome to Wise Traditions, Mandy.
Thanks, Hilda. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to talk to you.
I'm so excited to hear your story. Now, I understand it began when you were 12 years old and you had a heart for children and adoption. Tell us about that.
Yes. I don't know where it came from, actually. I just know that since I was a little girl, I used to say I wanted to adopt. So it was actually a condition upon accepting the proposal of my husband. So we had that whole debate about birth, adopt, who goes first. So it's kind of intermingled is the way that we've done it. And when we went to go adopt, no one prepared me. So when we were sitting in the office, they told me that it would be $14,000 for a white baby, it would be $11,000 for a mixed baby, and $8,000 for a black baby. And I was horrified. I just paused and said, like, one shoe is better than the other. And the response was, oh, no, honey, it's just supply and demand.
Oh, my goodness.
I didn't even know what to do. So we just said, hold, we don't know what we're going to do. We walked out of the office, and I didn't know how to deal with that. It was just the principle of the matter was too difficult to deal with. So we had some friends who said, why don't you foster? Then you kind of get who needs you, and, you can plant a seed and you can touch a lot more children. It seemed like a great idea. So that's what we did, and started the fostering process. It was super quick to do. Within 2 weeks, there was a class. They called it the MAPS class in Florida. Uh-huh. And I don't even know what the acronym stands for. But you went to this 10-week class, and your home had to be inspected. You had to be fingerprinted. You had to be nationally and locally searched. And I don't know how anybody could be bad in the foster system because we had so much investigation going on with us. And we were ready in 12 weeks and got our first child and just fell in love. What we didn't expect was the stigma that went along with it. We had no idea that there was this impression that went with fostering. And so now we're just trying to blow the roof off of that prejudice and what's happening.
What do you mean? Can you go into that a little bit, Mandy? What kind of stigma?
Well, at the time, we lived in a very prestigious neighborhood. It was mixed socioeconomic classes. And, we had, very wealthy people next to, us middle class, average people. And, Tiger Woods was in the neighborhood, a lot of, Magic basketball celebrities and movie stars and then the common. And we all interacted, it was just a very common place. But the comment that would come to me by all people was, why are you going to foster? You don't need the money. And I could not understand that question. And then when we began to foster, we realized we got $400 a month for the child. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. Mm-hmm. I can take them to all the holistic doctors when insurance doesn't cover any doctor that we go to. So it was perfect setup for me. And then, 5 passes to all of the theme parks and, for the child, it was a great, I used it that way. And it wouldn't even cover a week's of daycare. It wouldn't even cover 1 week of daycare for the child. So I couldn't understand why that was such a stigma. And then the more I delved in, I realized that because you have to have a certain amount of space for a child. You have to have so many square feet, for each child that's in your home and each person. So I began to realize there was this huge stigma out there, negative, and it regarded the fact that media only addresses when something goes wrong. So the populace sees that as being the normal, and that's not the normal.
Now, I'm just thinking about, you guys dove into this with both feet, and you got your first child. How far along in your marriage were you?
I would say we were probably about 10 years married. And we had, I never like to share who's adopted in my family, so this part's going to be a little tricky. So we did have one for sure that was our firstborn, and that's when we found Nourishing Traditions, because this child was born, he was underdeveloped. They couldn't attach a label or a syndrome because it was a little bit of everything. And so we kind of recovered him through the Nourishing Tradition book, and then he had the vaccines, and then he became fully autistic at age 3. And I had started med school, and so I backed out of everything and, jumped and dived in Nourishing Traditions. And then as we began to fulfill my lifelong dream to adopt, we started recovering these children too. And we realized it was the real food that was recovering, and, being careful with the vaccinations and delaying, as much as we could. And it was just a whole storm of knowledge that came, it seemed, all at once, along with all the children. And so we saw tremendous improvement in every kid we took in. We took in over 10, but 10 I know we had for, a significant amount of time to see the recovery more clearly.
Well, Mandy, so you said a storm of knowledge. Wasn't that what you were getting in medical school? I don't understand what made you back out of that.
Well, I had a conversation with the dean of the medical school at UF, and I said, why is the whole second year in pharmacology? Can't we have half pharmacology and half nutrition? And his response to me, Dr. Byrne was his name, he's now at Sinai Hospital, he said, oh, honey, I cannot change the medical system, but you're on to something. You should go study nutrition.
He said that.
He did. And so in the office, was, a part of that discussion. And so I decided not to go to med school and decided to do the NTA program, which was very clearly in the direction that I wanted. And now, over many years, I'm going to get my doctorate in either nutrition or chiropractic. I'm not exactly pinned down on that yet, but I realized that the food is really what's healing, and the food supplements, and the allopathic is extremely important for, traumatic cases when you have an accident or something comes up as a crisis. It's traditionally the way it is. And then the food is your recovery, because I saw in the CDC when I was doing my research, 90%, the CDC tells you 90% of health issues that we have in the ER are preventable at home.
90%.
90%. And so that's what I do. I prevent having to go to the ER 90% of the time. When we get a crazy, falling out of a tree or something with a kid, obviously that's an ER visit. But for the most part, we've been able to recover a whole lot of things that we were told you couldn't. And I have a whole lot of doctors who send me their wives and their kids and say, what do we do?
Oh my goodness. Mandy, I love that you use the term recover. I haven't heard many people use that. What do you mean by that?
Well, it's a term that I've used ever since I saw the effect of these children. So you have all the statistics that you see for the general populace. But when we got into fostering children, our first child was 2 years old, and his behavior was horrific. And we started to see that if I fed them real food, they wouldn't want to eat it at first because they didn't know what it was. Their taste buds didn't even recognize it. Wow. So we grew a garden. And when we grew the garden, we would let them watch it grow and cut it and take the leaves off and help me saute it. And, just the whole process of being attached and bonding with the earth and how you get your food, that it's not something you purchase from a grocery store. And we had tremendous success with each kid. eating this food. And then this first child, who was really our huge learning curve, because with the birth children, we didn't see any difference, because they grew up in that. But with the foster children, you could really see the difference. And then we would see them eat, and their taste buds would change over a 2-week period. This is the Mandy protocol, the real food recovery protocol. 2 weeks, you can change the taste buds, and that means they may go without a meal or 2 or 3, but that's okay because I present it to them. If they don't want to eat it, that's their prerogative, but at some point they'll get hungry and they'll eat it, and it's going to be real food that's in front of them. And then when they eat that food, it takes, literally, however that works, it's around 2 weeks, they actually change their taste buds, and they like real food, and they don't like the box food after a while, but I don't even present it ever. Mm-hmm. But I'm dealing with foster kids, so they go back. So I'm trying to change them. And the ones that I get to keep, they're changed forever. And, we're trying to educate them. But with that change in the taste buds, you can literally see a difference in behavior. And within 2 months, it's a well-behaved child with a happy disposition. It's just incredible.
We want to pause now and thank our sponsors, White Oak Pastures, pasture raising and hand butchering grass-fed beef, lamb, goat, and pastured poultry, hogs, and rabbits. Visit whiteoakpastures.com. And listeners like you. From the Bayside had this to say on iTunes recently. So glad to find this show. It's probably the best I've heard in this genre. True to its name of wise traditions, they offer practical and proven wisdom for healthier living. The material has practical applications for all listeners, and it goes beyond broad brushstrokes. Thank you so much for your encouragement from the Bayside. Every review helps put our show on the map for others, so we appreciate it. And now back to the program. Well, you're making it sound awfully easy to turn around the health of a child. Is it really so?
Yes and no. Yes, because I'm committed. Yes, because I, as a living soul who has lived longer and have been given the privilege to parent this little soul, know that my jurisdiction is to make sure they brush their teeth and that they eat real food. And with that comes perseverance and commitment. And I don't have a problem with that. Mm-hmm. I can make it fun. I can make it crazy. And we walk away if they can't do it or if they don't want to eat it. I get creative. I get very creative. We have done crazy things. And when it gets really high tension, I usually sing. Somehow that seems to melt it. I've shared with people, just a spoonful of supplements helps the minerals go down. Or just a spoonful of butter helps the nutrients go down. Just whatever I need to do and make it fun for that child so that they get the cofactors, they get the foods that they need to go together, they get, the fun factor, and it just happens. I just don't give up. I guess that's the moral here. And then the hard part is, with foster children, you're inheriting a lot of baggage. You're inheriting, scratches. You're inheriting neglect. I've had a lot of things happen to me that a lot of people maybe couldn't deal with. Mm-hmm. But I know their heart, and I know that it's just that their gut is messed up. And so if I can look to that and see that it's just their flora is messed up in their gut, it's not really them, I can correct that so I can look past it as a human being and love them for who I know they are supposed to be. And then 2 weeks, I know now after so many children, then you start to see them and then you fall in love, and then they call you mommy after 1 hour, Yeah. They melt your heart and you see what they need. I mean, literally the first child we got, we found out that he had cancer, but the first day, he scratched, another child. He, drew blood. I'm not talking like a little scratch. I'm like, scratch, draw blood. And he had bronchitis. He was coughing and hackling with the croup. He was on antibiotics. He had been for the past 30 days, Hilda.
Wow.
So I just said, hey, let's head out. Let's go, to our health store. We had a local guy that was just awesome. And we got this Sambuca elderberry syrup And that's what I used a lot of times when the kids were sick. And I gave him that and had him just sip on a little bit, like a little teaspoon. And it's sweet enough with the glycerin that every child likes it.
Mm-hmm.
And he would sip on that a teaspoon. Every few hours, I would give him some, and it helped get rid of that. So we moved that out instead of having to do the antibiotics, because obviously he'd been on them for 30 days. He needed to get off.
Yeah.
So we did that. And when we were there to buy it, the behavioral issue, he literally threw his head back, and I caught his head because I think he would have cracked it.
Wow.
Because he wanted a piece of candy, although it was healthy and organic, it was sugar, and I didn't want him to have any with what he had going on in his body.
Yeah.
And I said, no, honey, we don't want that right now. And he literally threw back to do a temper tantrum. I caught his head, and then I released him. And then the other children and this older lady, came in, and they were like, oh, and I was like, oh, no, you don't. You're going to turn around right now. We're not giving any attention to this behavior. And they were like, oh, my goodness. And so that was the mommy old soul in me, and literally, I kid you not, I didn't want to give any attention to that because I knew that he was better than that. And I had just met him the night before, and he was 2 years old, and he literally stood up and said, Mommy, I'm okay now. It's okay.
Wow.
And I was floored because I didn't cater to him. I didn't do what he needed to do. But these children react and respond so quickly because they're in such a poor state emotionally, physically, physiologically. So it's really, really rewarding.
And I guess that's why you're calling it recovery, because it's almost a discovery, but helping them to get back to who they were meant to be.
Absolutely. And so when you look at it from that standpoint, recovery is very easy. You just have to have the courage and the fun factor and the ability to recognize what you're achieving, the goal here. And it makes it super easy, in my opinion. This is the way we do it.
Yeah, because I'm thinking there are probably some moms out there listening right now who are thinking, I want my child's health to be recovered. I want them to be who they were meant to be. And yet they can't find the answers.
Right. Exactly. And that's the whole platform, is that if we can do this with our children that have come from very, very compromised states. I mean, things that, you're talking about sexual abuse, you're talking about emotional abuse, and I'm only dealing with children that are under my youngest. I always kept the birth order. So the oldest child I ever took in was 2, maybe 3, and all these things are at play. And you can correct and heal and recover a whole lot. And then as now I'm working in the foster homes with the older children, but my first child taught me everything. My very first child, who was 2, and when we went through the whole getting him straight, and then we gave him a garlic enema, which is something that my grandmother and my mother and everyone had done before me, we saw that there was something wrong and that he had cancer. It was a horrific experience to go through.
And what happened to him in the end, Mandy?
Well, I'd like to talk about the good part, which is that when we discovered that he had cancer, we were able to live and school and be at the hospital with him. But we did try to do Gerson, and we did try to do Brzezinski's, and we appealed it up to the state, and we did not have the option. We offered to pay ourselves. We were going to take a loan out. Mm-hmm. But because chemotherapy is so widely accepted, when you're a ward of the state, and he was not adopted at that point, we did not have a choice, and we appealed in a very kind manner. I'm not one of those bashing, hard fighters. I'm more of a gentle spirit in trying to appeal to the parent and every person. We did not accomplish what we wanted to, so we had to go through the chemo. And when we did that, we were able to do some things holistically during the process and help him live through that, because it is a miserable process. I had no idea. They wear hazmat suits when they come in there to inject this toxin. And we would sing, we would, on the, one hand talk to the nurses and go, how can you do this? Do you not see what you're doing? You're wearing a hazmat suit because you don't want it to touch you, but you're injecting it in this 2-year-old body.
Yeah.
Where is the intelligence in this? Where is the logic? I don't know how we got here, Hilda. I don't know how we landed in this place to think that we could put something inside a body that we don't even want to touch our skin. And yes, it may kill a cancer, but it kills a whole lot more. So we weren't able to make the choice. And we even had the conversation of, should we go to Mexico? It was a real choice, and our case managers knew it. We were really struggling with running away. But we made the hard decision to stay and go through it and be compliant with where we stood, and fought the cancer. And with the holistic, good, real food, I got to know so many doctors. I argued with so many dietitians, nutritionists, who would give him junk food-like products, really. Yeah. And we saw him recover. We stood our grounds on what food he could have. And, you know, his parents recovered, by the way, too, because they were allowed to come when we were there. His biological parents were able to come. And so it was a very, very difficult journey. The fostering was harder than the cancer. And as we went through all of that process, we were put in a place, you know, that I feel we were supposed to be, that, you know, God designed for us to drive us to where we are today. And going through that, he came to a place of recovery, and a remission, not a full remission, but a partial remission. And we made the decision to let him go in with his biological dad, which he wanted to do. And we got him, as if we were divorced parents, we got him a couple days a week and had a good relationship with them. And 6 months later, the food was not there in that diet. Even though we took food to him every week to make sure he ate good food, the food wasn't there. And so they called me whenever they had to go back, and it was the last time we were able to be with them. Within weeks, literally, Hilda, within weeks, he degenerated so rapidly that he asked me, you know, to let him go at age 4. And so we, you know, I told him it was okay. I let him go, and I got to hold him as he passed. And it's a very tender spot. It's a little bit tough for me to speak about, but I know somehow, and I hope this isn't offensive to anyone, that his spirit is with me, and that he somehow served his purpose, and that I will live it out, because I was perfectly happy being at home, helping all these kids, and these big foster kids and these little foster kids through my home and through the orphan homes. But because of this little guy, you know, that we call Dak, we will reach out to a world that needs this hope and needs to understand how important it is to eat real food, and how important it is to prepare your food properly, and how important the purpose is to appreciate the food that you have and to take it with gratitude. And so it served a purpose.
Absolutely. It sounds like, yes, his life, all that you went through together has served a purpose. And are you telling me that this has been the catalyst for your starting this nonprofit?
Absolutely. It's the catalyst for me even getting on Facebook and social media. I was not. It's the catalyst for a website, you know, realfoodrecovery.org. It's the catalyst for a nonprofit organization, which we are super excited about, because I can only take in so many children through my home. And, you know, they go back, they come, they go back, they come in. But when I hit a foster home, I can touch lots and lots of children. You know, just 2 weeks ago, I was with 18 children in a maternity home, foster kids who were 18 and under, who were pregnant or had had a child. And I had the privilege of loving these girls and preparing them food, a meal, and, you know, teaching them how to cook and making them cook. And we spent 2 hours together, and it was jam-packed, and, you know, giving them little gifts and showing them not only in knowledge and intellect, but, you know, physically handing them important things like coconut oil and, you know, certificates to go buy things that are real food at health stores. You know, this is what has happened from this one little boy. You know, where now I've touched so many lives based on how Nourishing Traditions, Sally Fallon, Mary Enig, you know, all the chiropractors in my life, all the medical doctors that were holistic have touched me. I'm able to reach out and touch all these foster children and watch them, that light bulb come on, and them go, oh my goodness, I have power. And I'm empowered to what I put in my mouth. I may not have control over where I live and my circumstances, but I can choose what I put in my mouth. And it's brilliant, Hilda. It's just wonderful to take what we did in our home and then move it out into these homes and see the healing and the recovery happen, because everybody's sick. Everybody needs to recover.
Oh, that is so true. It's a little bit alarming.
Yeah, it
And
really is.
I say a little bit alarming. It's actually quite alarming. But you know what I'm thinking, Mandy, is I'm thinking you need to demystify and open our eyes as the general public. I will speak for John Q. Public right now and say, I know nothing about what's happening in foster care and the foster care system. You mentioned a foster home. I don't even know what that is. So can you back up and tell us a little bit about the foster care system? Where are foster children today?
It's a mixed bag. So first, let me just say there are between 400 and 500,000 children in the United States of America in the fostering system. There's $100,000 vacillation between a 5-year period. It goes back and forth, and that's simply based on how many they allow adopt and how many are reunified with their biological parents. These children were in a position, and I would say 80% of them are correct and 20% are misplaced into the system. So those, generally, hopefully, go back to their biological parents. The ones that are in there, the 80% that genuinely need to be in there, it's because their parents are drug addicts. Mm-hmm. It's because their parents have problems with domestic violence, and that's 99% of it. Then what happens is they go to these foster families like we did. We decided that we wanted to adopt, and the adoption process was a little bit funky, as you heard before. Mm-hmm. So we come into this program saying, we'd like to adopt. We'll take whatever children that their parents can't keep them or that they don't want them. And so that makes up a significant portion. I think it's around 30 to 40%, give or take. And then the remainder, and it's usually the 8-year-olds and above. Everybody wants the little ones. So when you become 8, generally speaking, they've been in over 6 homes, different homes, because people can't deal with the baggage that they come with. Mm-hmm. And then they go into these homes, which generally have 22. It's around 22 is the average students or, children in a home. And they have a foster home mom and a foster home dad, or however that arrangement works, whoever the guardians are there. And that's where the bulk of our foster children are in these homes. And it's, anywhere from, 15 to 30 children in there. So those children go to school. They're in the school system. They live in this very, unique environment. They usually try to hide it. They're embarrassed. Mm-hmm. They're usually sick. They usually have all kinds of issues, especially trust factors. They don't know who to trust because the people they were supposed to trust were not honorable. I don't know how else to say that nicely. Mm-hmm. So they have a whole lot of emotional issues to deal with, along with when you're in a state system home, just like any prison or assisted living home, you get what is widely accepted. You get whatever is standard American diet. You get whatever is the normal for this society. So unfortunately, the widely accepted that we have right now, to use euphemisms, is not cool. It's not good right now. So these kids are eating boxed and bagged food. They're eating fast food. When I go look in the refrigerators, we all have a little powwow in the fridge and go, okay, where's the food in here? Somebody show me. That's kind of the stuff we do. And, these children make up a huge amount of population. And the good news is the ones that are adopted or their biological parents, actually do recover from their addictions, which is a very small percentage. Those children actually go on to be okay. But the majority of them run through the system. And, hopefully there's half of them that are adopted. And then the remainder are the ones that they call emancipated, but it really means aged out at 18. Uh-huh. And so these children at 18, have a big celebration within the system. Congratulations, you're on your own. Welcome to the world. And it's a really scary place. Yeah. And these children, there are some transition homes out there for them, but within 5 years, statistics prove and show that 75% of them end up incarcerated in prison.
Oh my goodness.
It's a really big issue. And so, obviously to hit the older children and the younger children and to get into the system, they're the ones that people don't want to talk about. It's the Annie, but no one wants to go to Warbucks.
Yes. I was thinking this is a modern day orphanage situation.
Yes.
And it's so ironic that, by the way, when they age out, they call it, emancipation, because the freedom that they're going to experience is not freedom at all if they're not given the right platform and the right tools for healthy living, right?
Right. And they've grown up on boxed and bagged foods, and and they're in the system. So when you're in a home, you have a greater chance of someone cooking real food and going and getting produce. But I mean, unfortunately, there seems to be this merging where there's not a whole lot of difference between the foster kids and the population.
I know.
And so we have to kind of turn it around. And so that's where I feel very, very confident that if we can turn it around for foster children, which we have, how easy is it for everybody else to turn around the health of their family? And just by simply eating real food and dropping the sugar and eating raw honey and replacing it, or trying to diminish or reduce the amount of boxed foods that you have and adding some kind of pickled food that's fermented, and drinking enough water, which is the whole principle of the cookbook that I have. What foods, broccoli heals cancer, so I give broccoli recipes in my book. So basically, over the past 10 years of doing this, I've written this book just to say, here's the food, don't lose your hope, because in 2 weeks you can change the taste buds of your family, and in 2 months you can change the behavior of your family, and that includes mom and dad.
Mandy, it sounds amazing, but is there anybody out there who says, you dream too big, this is impossible, the scope of children's lives you want to change is too large? What do you say to them?
Yes, I get that quite a bit. I basically laugh at them and smile because I know that it can happen. I've seen it happen so many times. You can't tell me that it won't happen. And you may not get 100% recovery, but you'll get 90%. If you really put your mind to it, you can absolutely turn this around. And I am not dreaming big, because if I can do this with the few children that I have dealt with, and now, I think I'm around over 100 at this point, I know that anybody can do this. I'm a mom. I'm a nutritional therapist. I'm educated. It's easy. There's nothing spectacular about it. It's simple, and anybody can do this. So absolutely, I believe that we can turn around everybody's health. You just have to want to.
Well, and speaking of turning around health, my final question to my guests is often, what is one thing you would recommend that the listener do to improve their health?
To recover to a wonderful place of healing, and a place where you are happy, where you are comfortable, where you have joy in your life again, and you can walk without joint pain or back pain and see things in a more pleasant light, which is what I see a lot, is the behavioral issues stemming from bad health, and then all the aches and ailments from it, is simple, simple, simple. Just eat real food. Go to the farmer's market. Find the ones who try not to spray or that are completely organic. Find the perimeter of your grocery store when you go in there. Get as organic as you can. Walmart has organic, which is very affordable. Farmer's market, I contend, is the cheapest way to do it. And then eat those real foods. Experiment. Do lots and lots of foods. If you don't like the first 10, keep going. There's so many choices out there. Keep trying foods, and you'll find the ones you like, and you'll find the ones you love. And eat those real foods, properly prepared. Soak those nuts, soak those seeds and grains. And it's just super simple to do. Replace your sugar with honey, with raw honey, occasional maple syrup, and just keep it real food. Look at the source of the food where it comes from. And if it's been processed a whole lot, then don't eat it. Knock it out. And you'll see a difference in 2 weeks. You'll actually start changing the taste buds in your body. You'll begin to enjoy those real foods. And then within 2 months, you'll start realizing, wow, I'm not so depressed. Wow, I'm kind of happy about getting up today. And you'll see that change happen. If you keep it in your head, 2 weeks, 2 months, you'll remember. that this is doable and you can hang in there and do it.
Mandy, thank you for your time today. This has been a great conversation.
Well, I'm so happy to, hopefully help many people get healthy. And thank you, Hilda, for all that you do. You're pretty amazing at what you're doing. And I appreciate, all the efforts that you have in spreading the love and the information that's out there, because we're all, like you said, a drop in the bucket, and we're going to hit this, and we're going to, next thing you know, have an ocean full and turn this health around and have real food recovery of all the people in the world. I just have no doubt we can turn this around.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Mandy.
Thank you.
Our guest today was Mandy Blume. Her new book, Real Food Recovery, was just released. Visit her website, realfoodrecovery.org, to learn more. Or just go to the westinaprice.org website, click on podcasts, and go to episode 42. You'll find the show notes that will show you all the resources mentioned here. And a big shout out to Podcast Village and Sarah Fernandez for your tech support for the show. We appreciate you all big time.
Thanks for listening today. Our website, westinaprice.org, offers free resources to address your questions and support your journey to health. You'll find videos, articles, and brochures covering a broad variety of health topics. Wise Traditions is brought to you by the Weston A. Price Foundation for Wise Traditions in Food, Farming, and the Healing Arts. The content of this podcast is provided for informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for medical advice.